Good evening. It's 10 past 10, time for Press Pass. My name is Mark Messiah. I know some of you wish that I had my beard gone, but this one's staying for a bit. This is what's coming up on the program tonight. This is one very famous case on Mary Wamboi's murder, and we'll be looking at the coverage of gender-based violence and crimes of passion, if you may call it that, and see if media has a part to play in the increase of such cases.
I don't think media is a catalyst in terms of murders and homicides that are going on in our country today.
Mimi huwa naona inachangia tena zaidi. Kwa sababu tunaelewa Kenya kuna tabia mbili ambazo Wakenya wako nazo. Ya kwanza ni ya kukimbia dakika ya mwisho, na ya pili ni ya kufanya jambo ambalo linafanywa kila mahali.
And those are just some thoughts that we'll be sampling from Eldoret and Nandi on whether people think that media actually is a catalyst in cases of violence. So let's meet our guests who will actually be making up the show. It's not about me, it's about the thoughts that we'll be sharing and critiquing our coverage here. And yes, it's a panel of four, and right on the top right corner we have Winnie Kamau, the president of the Association of Freelance Journalists and is also a data journalist. And just below her is Naitore Nyamu. She's a programs officer, Equality Now, which advocates to end sexual violence in Kenya. And right on the top left side is Dr. Chitai Murabula. You might be wondering, what is he doing here? You've seen him before in the name of politics. But yes, he's changed caps today, and he's here as a consultant psychiatrist with a keen interest on mental health and a reportage on the same. And right below him is Elizabeth Wanja Gadu, also a colleague in the industry of freelance journalists with a bias for social justice and peace building. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that we could have some time to share some thoughts on this, candid thoughts that is. We will be going through some of the headlines that have been featuring on cases of gender-based violence and murders of passion, if we could call it that. But first, let's start with the people who are on the receiving end of various reports on TV, on the paper, on radio. And we asked those several people from Eldoret and Nandi whether they felt the increased coverage or the constant coverage of cases of violence leads to even more cases recurring. So this is what they had to say.
The media is doing the very best to give us information of actually what is happening in the society. And to be sincere, I think we need to accept the fact that we have got a problem in the society. We have a real problem in the society, and more so in our families. The social fabric is totally torn. The people who are killing each other are real.
I don't think media is a catalyst in terms of murders and homicides that are going on in our country today. I think social media does the most part of it, and to some point people come to read about most murders on social media.
Inachangia watu waweze kujua nini kimefanyika na waweze kujifunza kulingana na kile kitu ambacho kimefanyika ili kisiweze kufanyika, na wanaona kwamba ukifanya kitu kibaya bila shaka unachukuliwa hatua ambayo inafaa, yani mkono wa sheria unafanya nini, unakukabili.
Unaweza ona kuwa rafiki yako au ndugu yako amefanya kitendo fulani, amepiga mke wake, wamekorofishana. Hapo siwezi kusema kuwa ni media.
Mimi huwa naona inachangia tena zaidi. Kwa sababu tunaelewa Kenya kuna tabia mbili ambazo Wakenya wako nazo. Ya kwanza ni ya kukimbia dakika ya mwisho, na ya pili ni ya kufanya jambo ambalo linafanywa kila mahali. Kwa hivyo wakati media wametangaza jambo, wakitangaza kona hii, unasikianga wale wengine upande ule mwingine wameanza.
Most of the killings is out of frustration. There is family disagreements. So zidane kama media inachangia.
Kwa upande wangu mimi nasema media ndio inachangia kwa asilimia kubwa sana.
Mimi si kuona maneno kama hii samani kwa sababu ilikuwa haitangazwi, lakini hii kutangaza kuletwa kwa magazeti inachangia sana.
So that's just a sample of the views. It's not countrywide, and of course it's not to say that these cases are in Eldoret or Nandi. This is what we managed to get from our correspondents, but it is a sample and can actually be used to see what Kenyans think about this issue. And I'll put it to the panel as they were listening to this and whether they think there is concern that reportage of such cases, or at least how we go about it, can lead to a copycat syndrome, as they call it in the profession. I'll start with Winnie, the president of the Association of Freelancers here in Kenya. What are your thoughts on this?
I think what's happening right now, we're seeing so many of these cases being covered, and like we were talking with Dr. and he was just explaining that maybe it's a case of giving more prominence to these stories that for the longest time maybe we never had the courage to talk about such issues. And with the prevalence of the social media getting even back into the counties where we always thought that maybe we can't get news from there, they're the people who are reporting back to us and telling us this is what is happening in the village, this is what is happening in the counties. And the more we talk about it, the more we are able to realize that we have an issue, we have a deep-seated issue within us as a people, as a society, and we need to talk about it and get to a place where we can be able to get a kind of healing point for us. Yes, as a society, even as a nation.
And perhaps that's somewhere we can come in terms of media and the platforms that we have and the influence that we have to shape the conversation for the nation. But there's a gentleman at the end there, Elizabeth, and he said, kitambo, sikuwa naona vitu kama hizi, sababu it wasn't reported, so he feels it didn't happen that much. Do you see any connection with the reportage and the occurrence of these incidences?
Well, I would say that there's an increase. Evidently, there's an increase of these kind of interactions, people killing one another, partners killing one another. The increase is there. The media has played a part in the sense that they're the ones who've been reporting on these issues. Sometimes they make it so much so that it is on everyone's mind. But I would also want to put across that the media has a duty to show the society what is going on. So they're doing their job as they're telling their stories, but the way they're telling their stories has created a perception. For example, when you call this, when someone has killed a partner and you're calling it a crime of passion, when someone has killed another and you're calling it a love triangle, these terminologies connote something. In my mind, love does not harm. Love is kind. Love does not kill. When you're calling this passion, what does that tell the person that is listening? Crime of passion? I would want to think about these things as we need to, because of what is happening to us right now, we need to change the way we are reflecting these things. When you're calling this a crime of passion, you should be calling it a hate crime. Because when you kill someone, you hate them. There's no love involved. So probably if we change how we put these things across, then in the minds of the people who are listening and watching these things, something will change. But then, like Winnie is saying, that as much as the media has done this, because they're telling the stories as they come, society has a problem. This, you know, not everyone who watches news and listens to what you're broadcasting goes out and acts it out. A young person who hears this and goes and kills a partner has a problem to begin with. This problem did not come across because the media has done something. This is a young person who is struggling with issues of probably pain from other pain points, social injustices, young men, young women feeling vulnerable. So they're just waiting for a trigger. So should the media stop reporting these things? No, they should not stop telling what is happening. But should they tell it in a different way? Yes, I think there should be caution.
Okay, the framing of such cases. Dr. Murabula, from your background as a psychiatrist, is there any, as she's calling it, a trigger, and perhaps from what people see, that could actually lead someone, perhaps with a background of bad, deteriorating mental health, to copy what they've seen elsewhere? Can we make that connection really?
First, I have to say that broadly we can classify these cases into three. We have suicides.
Yes.
Acts of violence can be violence against oneself. And you can also have suicide, homicide, where someone kills another person or other people and kills themselves. Then you can also have homicide alone, where someone just kills another person. And cases of extreme violence, some resulting into injury and others resulting into death, have been here for a while. 5 years ago, during the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey of 2014, the study found that up to 45% of women and 44% of men aged between 15 and 49 years had experienced some form of violence. The women mostly had experienced violence from their husbands, and the men had experienced violence either from a parent or from teachers or others, including siblings. And so, coming to 2019, what we've seen is that everyone thinks that there's been an increase, but no study has been done to show that there's actually been an increase. However, we know that when cases of suicide and homicide are covered in the media, usually there are thousands of people out there who are in similar situations.
Yes.
And when someone is in a similar situation and this is covered, they always get ideas and they're triggered to want to copy what they have seen. And this happens mostly in the setting where the coverage, itself tends to, what you can say, glamorize. And I don't think if media does this deliberately, they do this quite innocently, but it comes out as glamorization because of the descriptive details that they give of the person, of the place, of the method, of these incidences.
But it's creating the picture in the defense of the journalist, creating the picture as it is. Yes. And because, I mean, you must be inhumane to glamorize this kind of incident or happening.
Yes, and they said it is very innocent. Sometimes the media practitioner does not know. An example of glamorization, for example, is if this incident happens and it gets the headlines of a newspaper, for example, that's already glamour, And so that's an incident where the journalist may not know that they're glamorizing, but by putting it on the front page, and that's the first thing that someone will see when they take up that newspaper, then they'll get ideas about what happened.
Yes. Yes, that could be glamorized, could be seen as glamorizing in one aspect, but is also perhaps even setting the agenda. Yes. We need to put this in the public space for discussion. And someone might say that we're setting the agenda in giving us as much focus. And there's a case like Ivy Wangeshi's story, the very sad one, and those weeks and weeks of coverage of the same. To what he's talking about, what we do innocently, do you agree?
I do not agree at all. And first of all, Dr. you forgot another form of violence that is very pervasive, and which is femicide. Killing of women, not just killing of women, but because they are women. If you look at the cases that we've received in the past 2 months, the majority of the victims have been women. And instead of calling it femicide, we call it crime of passion, what Elizabeth is saying, love triangle. It's not love triangle. You're killing, it's very gender specific, and it is femicide. And for me, that's one of the issues I have with the media. Call it as it is. Don't shy away from reporting.
It's a murder.
Yes, it's murder. It's killing. You've taken the life of an innocent person, regardless of what relationship you have. That does not
help
even
us understand the importance of separating whether it's male or female, because it's murder. It's a life that's been taken.
It's murder by all means, even if it's a male person who has been killed. But in this case, I was just speaking to the numerous cases that we've received so far of so many women who have been killed. It's murder, whether you kill a man or a woman, a child, it's still murder.
Yes.
Yeah, the only difference is between manslaughter and murder. And in one of those is that one there is malice, aforethought, the intention, and the other one lacks it.
Okay.
Yes. But now just to go back to the conversation around the media and how they report, good job in terms of reporting. There is so much prominence in this and coverage, which is really good, because previously we may not have seen such coverage in the newspapers, on TV and social media and all that. But how are you reporting? What sort of message, what sort of agenda are you setting for anyone reading? And I came armed, Mark. I'll just give you examples of how you report. This is from one of the daily newspapers. Another student stabbed by boyfriend. You've already watered down murder because you're justifying it. You're justifying it. He's being killed by the boyfriend. This is another one. Boyfriend of Pauline Wangari, the murdered prison warder in Muranga, to remain in custody. I mean, are you looking at this person has already been killed? Then there's another one. The families of the victims also here being shown. We are not going deep into the issues that we have as a society, and this stems from the fact that the killings and the femicides that we are seeing, it stems from the sort of a society we have. If we look at the inequalities that we have in the society, if we look at the perspective economically, socially, and politically, the killings are just a manifestation of what's going on in our society.
Right.
And the last one, someone even wrote an article on how to stay safe from violence of passion. I'm like, as a woman, you're now even being advised on how you're going to stay safe from being killed. And then now that...
well, what would be wrong with this kind of story? Because if it is a reality, be as it may, we're not agreeing with it or advocating for it, but we're saying this is a reality, and perhaps from the advice that we're getting from psychiatrists and other people, perhaps even security personnel, this is how you should perhaps protect yourself.
No, Mark. You're putting the burden of protection on a victim. You're already blaming a victim. It's your fault that you're killed. So let me teach you how to stay away from being killed. Ivy, I don't want to get so much into this matter because this is a case that's already ongoing in court.
Yes.
This is a girl who was in school. Yeah? Okay. There's another lady who was killed in her home at night by the spouse. And before, we were being told as women, stay in your house, stay in school, don't go out. But now we are seeing women are being killed left, right, and center. And the reports that we get from our newspapers, it's killing a lover, it's killing the wife. We've normalized murder and killing of women to such an extent that we look for justification. As people always say, when such a story is highlighted, just go to the comments. Then you'll realize what sort of a message the media is passing. When you report, when you put such a headline, Mark, or other media platforms, when you see how people are commenting and even making a song about a shocker, because an axe was used to kill someone.
Yes.
When people even are saying, I mean, if someone brings you issues, do this to her, it's because of the message. Glamorizing that she's talking.
Is it the way the message is framed or the reality in the society of how rotten it's gotten?
If I may.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Go ahead first, Elizabeth, and then Winnie.
I hear where my colleague is coming from.
Yes.
And she's speaking like a woman. You can tell that she's bitter and she's feeling aggrieved because we are all in a society that is constantly harping on the negatives that are happening around us. But like I said, the media has a duty to tell it as it is.
Right.
But even as you're telling that story, are you applying the other angle that is saying, we are sensitive to what is going on here. We want to safeguard the interest of the victims here. Okay. We want to tell this story without adding glamour, like Dr. is saying. Once I interacted with a pathologist in a seminar, and he brought to my mind something very interesting, that because of the way we report, when you find a person hanging from a tree, the media, journalists and the general public will conclude this person has committed suicide. But in the real sense of the word, this person could have been killed elsewhere, hanged on a tree. Okay. When you find them, you conclude they have committed suicide. Mm-hmm. Now, in this case, when a woman is found murdered, the media is already reporting the boyfriend has killed this person. This is a boy and a friend, then the killer. So what are we giving emphasis to? Are we saying this person is a friend and therefore a killer? Do you get where I'm coming from? Mm-hmm. You're creating confusion. And then you're also saying, you're not the investigators, you have not established for a fact that this is a boyfriend who has committed this act. But already you are saying it's a boyfriend.
But it would be reported normally as a suspect based on witness accounts. And even authorities sometimes, the chief or the local commissioner who would say, what we are pursuing is a boyfriend who she lived with, and then you'd hear they were said to have had some fights and squabbles in the marriage.
But the headline already reads, a boyfriend has killed this girl. Exactly. And then now you go ahead and justify that. The Ava's story was distressing, so to speak. Right. Because I could read the details and say, okay, you have person has been killed here. Then there's a justification. It's all written down. It is like, this guy was taking money from this boy. This boy gave this girl money. This and that happened. So now the boys are getting the message that it is justifiable. If you give a girl some money and then she does not do what is expected of her, the usual, we know what this is bringing about, you can kill her. Consequently, you've seen kids producing music that is glorifying these killings. And I'm not saying that the media must stop talking. I'm saying the media must speak. Okay. But you must put yourselves in this space of society, because you live here. Yes, we all live here. It is affecting us. Our sisters or brothers are being affected.
And so we mirror the society.
We mirror the society. Yes. We should. But how do we tell the story without harming people more? Okay. Or even re-victimizing and re-traumatizing people that have been affected?
Okay. Yes. Winnie, you had something to say, and I see Dr.
I guess now we need to, like the way Naitore and Elizabeth, they're talking about how to define these murders. I guess we need to come to the reality and find out these definitions. So what is a mariticide? This is the killing of a lover, of a husband or a boyfriend. Then we have the uxoricide, which is the killing of a female lover or a wife. Once we know those definitions, then we know what we are dealing with. And I will interest you to know that in the recent economic survey released by KNBS just recently, showed that the numbers have gone down in terms of murder. If you're looking at the numbers of 2018, we had 1,312. It's not a good number, but the numbers have gone down compared to what we are seeing, what we had in 2017, which was at 1,435 murders. In 2016, we had 1,439 murders. So Daktari was asking, we haven't looked at the data, but we have the data. So if you compare the numbers, they have gone down. Yes, we're talking about it more, but the numbers are still coming down. Okay. And then if you go back to the definition of these murders, Naitore talked about femicide. Femicide is a killing of, intentionally killing the female gender, going after the female gender. And that is something that I do not agree with you, Naitore, completely on that, because we're seeing increasingly, it's not only the females who are being murdered, even the males are being murdered, the husbands. And we're seeing both, it's like a competition of sorts. Husband gets annoyed with the wife and kills the wife and the kids. Wife gets annoyed with the man, kills the man, and disappears. It begs the question, what is the underlying factor? What is this thing that is triggering these murders? Because these murders are just becoming too much that you are even cautious. Even like right now, if I'm on social media, if somebody was to inbox me, I'm cautious. I'm like, I don't want to give out details because I don't know how this whole story will end up. Right. You might end up getting into my DM, and the next thing, you've done things that I do not understand.
Okay, Daktari,
Thank you, Winnie. Winnie has brought up, very important facts, that are more scientific. I like what she said, that statistically, in fact, it's been seen that some of these incidences have gone down. However, where does media come in? Studies have shown that in the days that follow prominent coverage of these incidences, they tend to spike. Okay. Like if a suicide case is highlighted, for example, of a celebrity, or in a prominent way, then days that follow up to around 2 weeks in that period, these cases will go up. And unfortunately, with our media, what happens is that if it so happens, then we tend to cover it cover the new cases that happen around that period. I don't know what usually goes on within the media houses, so that we tend to continue covering these stories. In fact, after one incident, the media could come up with their own policies of how to, put a moratorium on the coverage of such incidences until things calm down. Because once you go into a cascade of covering murders, homicides, suicides, it looks like now it is fashionable.
Yes, but we're living in
it.
I don't agree with you.
No. But the data proves otherwise.
Please allow me.
Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point.
Really quick,
Let me finish my point. Yeah. I mean, I believe that we do not have, maybe operating procedures, that sort of guide. And I wish that there's a point where we could have a discussion amongst the health professionals and the media professionals about, how to develop procedures to cover some of these very sensitive issues.
Okay.
For example, that's around, let's say, suicide. When you cover suicide, for example, you have to educate the public about suicide. You must be able to give information about where to find help. You must not repeat that story in terms of coverage. All these are World Health Organization standards that sometimes you don't apply locally.
All right. Some thoughts that we actually have to clarify when we go on with the conversation, because as it happens, it's reported it's happened, and then in days to come, you have people, perhaps people from the psychology kind of field and legal field and even religious field who respond and try to help people understand why is it that there's an increase or what you should do to avoid this and that. So it does happen. But there's something you really had to say really quick, and I need to take a break, and then I'll give you an opportunity to open when we get back.
On this point, I'm in agreement with you. There's nothing wrong with the media reporting. In fact, air those stories. Let's get to hear of them and learn about them. The issue is how are you reporting these stories? And that's why, as the doctor was saying about the procedures by WHO, there are also other procedures or trainings that the media can undergo. Like at Equality now, we have trainings on gender-sensitive reporting, and specifically looking at sexual and gender-based violence. You'd not just go and take a story of a girl who's been raped. You cover her face, but now standing next to her is her father or the village where she comes from. Everyone will say, we know that person. So just having that frame of mind on how are we going to report these cases? Are we causing more harm? And bearing in mind, especially in Kenya, the media, may it be the radio discussions that take place early in the morning or primetime news, we really buy in what the media says, Mark. And most Kenyans watch TV or they read the newspaper. And now with the social media is very vibrant in Kenya. So how the media reports any story is what we really need to address. And it's very key in all stories.
And perhaps this is something else that you'd want to respond to. Frederick Kavoy, he says, and he was following your comment there on femicide, he says, however, we should not forget about male, sorry, it's just loading up right now, but I can see it from where I am, about male gender violence. Like our brothers from Nyeri will say, they are the victims in this case. I don't know why it's not loading up, but that's something that, yes, there you go. That's something that you would need to respond to and give because sorry to say, sometimes when there's an insistence on why don't you report this as femicide, it almost makes it look like the female life the life of a woman is more important than the life of a man. And there are killings that are happening every day, and they need to be reported, whatever gender it is.
And it goes back to the first statistic I gave. The first statistics I gave when we started the show from Kenya Demographic and Health Survey 2014 showed that about 45% of women and 44% of men have experienced physical violence.
Right.
And actually right now the economic survey shows that 48.6% of the murders is on the male and 37.7% is on the women. So it's not about femicide.
Exactly.
As such.
No.
The
I think
we need to take a break at this point. I'll let you clarify when we get back from the break. Because we need to take this break and give you an opportunity to respond to this question that people bring up. Stay with Press Pass. Conversation continues shortly. continuing, and Winnie is giving us some data as we are on the break, and you'll give us a bit more on that. Yes. I just need to look at what people are saying as they follow this conversation, and I'd really want you to give a response and clarify what you meant there. Dylan Nyariki, you say, well, from my end, media is trying to bring these cases to the limelight. By doing so, they are enlightening the public at large. And that was to the question whether he feels media can be a catalyst and lead to copycat kind of syndrome and cases where people repeat the crime. Nginya Ngaruma, you say the quality of reporting, and I'm sorry it's taken a while to load, the quality of reporting the news has deteriorated dramatically because of the tendency to equate to storytelling. The flowery language abound, so and so passing away or passing on has no place in the news story, and cliches like crime of passion and love triangle, in his view, are simply insults. And as I read some of these, I just want you to take a note of them. And yes, Frederick Kavu, he also gave a point earlier. He agrees with Daktari. The point of not repeating some cases like suicide in news reporting is very important, very crucial. I wish all media houses could embrace this. And this you brought up in the name of some procedures. But I'll start with you in terms of the clarity of femicide. And there seemed to be a clamor. Guys, there's a rise in femicide cases. And why is it important to bring this out to the fore in our reportage?
Mark, let me first just clarify something I said. I did not say that the only people who are being killed are women. There are also men, yes, who are also killed or murdered. Yes. Yes. So let's set that clear first. Okay. However, if you look at, just to come back to you, the cases of femicide, killing women because they are women, they are on the rise, that's for sure. And even in moving forward in as far as statistics are concerned, what they need to be very disaggregated. Don't just say 20,000 women were killed in 2019. Say, how are these women killed? 40,000, for example, men were killed in 2019. How are these women killed? A study shows that most men, a large percentage of men, are killed outside their home. And when it comes to women, they are killed within their homes and their community. Men will be killed on their way to work. It could be robbery, a police shootout or something like that. But most cases of women who are murdered, it's within their home. And that's the same thing, and that just also makes sense, because even the cases of sexual and gender-based violence that are not even fatal, most of them, intimate partner violence, women are not safe at home or with the people that they relate with. And even when you look at defilement cases, rape of small children, it's always someone who is known to them. It could be an uncle, a father, a neighbor. So even looking at the minors, it's the same thing. And that's also what transcends to what we have when it comes to femicide. Yes. It's something that's entrenched in our society. And just to respond to what one of your viewers was talking about, that a certain community also where many men are also victims of sexual and gender-based violence. Absolutely, men also undergo SGBV in one way or another. And the media should also report that. I'm not saying that the media should not come to the forefront and say this man underwent SGBV. By all means, it should be reported. However, as a women's human rights advocate, a case that affects a woman, when I see so many cases of femicide, when I see women being killed, and we are normalizing it, and how even the reports comes is the man was angry, or it's because this man gave her money, or was giving her money, or it's because she promised her. And even we've seen cases where even a woman sent back the money that she was sent, she was still stabbed. So those cases will only, I will be as passionate about them and factual about them, because this is something that's happening. Okay. And lastly, on reporting again and the procedures, I was talking about the media and the journalists and those people who report having to undergo a training on gender-sensitive reporting. How do you report cases of SGBV? How do you report cases of murder? How do you report cases of defilement? Yeah, just having that, and especially those journalists who are very interested in that or who report on a daily basis on these cases. And at times you may not know whether cases of SGB will be thrown to you, Mark.
Yes.
So it's very vital for all media houses to invest in this and work with other like-minded NGOs. I know so many NGOs who do, or even other media organizations who offer this training to journalists. Yes. Okay. And at Equality now, we've trained a couple of journalists on this, and it bears fruit. It does bear fruit.
And I'd want us to get to that, but in the next part, there are some figures you were giving, and this is in response to what she was talking about, femicide. And just quote some of the figures that you have, and whether indeed it separates the fact that, you know, if it's the men who are being killed, they've been killed within their homes or outside.
So the figures that I have are from KNBS. This is the economic survey for 2019, and it shows that the murders for 2018, as I had said, it's 1,312. If you disaggregate that data, goes to the male, they were 1126. So the murders against that were done by the male were 1,126, while the female was 186. That is in 2018. In 2017, it was 1,435 total, and in 2016 was 1,439. You'll be curious to even find out that even the suicides have declined over the years.
Okay.
In 2016, the total was 302. In 2017, it was 421. In 2018, it was 177. When you look at the rape cases, we see the rape cases against the male, females who are accused of raping. In 2018, it was 46 women or female, the gender. And in 2018, 875 men. So that was 921. So in terms of rape cases have increased, because if you compare it with 2017 numbers, it shows 784 rape cases occurred. 2016, 923. In 2015, 893. When you look at that number, then you can say, in terms of rape cases have increased. In terms of murders have reduced. And in terms of suicides have reduced over these years.
Yeah. Okay, real quick one on that, and then you make your point.
You know, I
Elizabeth.
hear these statistics, and I begin to worry, because when you start to tabulate or put people in the space of numbers, you lose the human element. Because people, or young women dying and boys killing themselves or whatever it is that is going on should not be reduced to numbers. Just saying, because you're saying there's a decline.
But we need the numbers so that we can be able to have evidence.
I hear that.
We can be able to base the facts.
I hear the
and
numbers.
be able to do interventions that are really
I hear the numbers.
factual.
I hear the numbers. But I also note that there is a spike in the number of young women. As we speak, we're talking about crimes of passion. So let us just zero in on this and say, as we speak right now, between January and now, what is happening? We're talking about this, and we're not going to hide what is going on in our society behind numbers. So we are saying there's a societal problem, there's a big issue going on, and it is not about what the media is reporting or what it is not reporting. It is about what is going on in the society. So can we first address that and say, okay, the media has tended to focus on the killings. How about what is triggering these things? What is causing these young people to do this? What interventions are there? Are we speaking about these things really? I don't think so.
And in terms of, in terms of, we'll give an opportunity to Dr. first, because in terms of the numbers and in telling this particular story, we can't reduce lives to just numbers. That's very true.
Exactly.
But even from a psychiatric intervention, it's good to understand where we're coming from.
Yes, I mean, if you ignore the numbers, then I don't know where you'll find evidence to put in interventions or where you'll start asking questions about what's causing this. And so I do not have an alternative to not having numbers. I must have the numbers. And unfortunately, I you know, from my own analysis and even from WHO, I think the numbers that she has from the source for suicide are a bit low. And I understand that suicide is a taboo subject in Kenya.
Yes.
Suicide Penal Code 226, it's a misdemeanor and someone can go to jail. These are some of the laws that we must actually reform in this country about decriminalizing suicide. And she also raised an important question earlier.
But just on that point, not to let it go,
yes,
the source or the background to that, and you understand this because you're in that field as well in terms of law, isn't that to discourage cases of suicide, to make you know that if indeed it happens and you're not successful, you will be penalized. It's a crime.
It's a law that totally ignores the origins of suicide, because 95% of people commit suicide have a mental illness. And therefore, if you punish someone who attempts suicide, it's the same as punishing someone who limps because they have a broken leg. It's totally obnoxious.
And there's no case where you feel if it's lifted, that legal policy is out and they say, you cannot be penalized, there won't be a rise in this?
What we should be talking about is talking about mental illnesses that lead to suicide and how they can be treated, instead of punishing the patients. So in terms of suicide and even suicide, homicide, and to an extent homicide, there's usually some mental ill health element, and most specifically for suicide and suicide homicide. In homicide itself, where someone simply exercises extreme violence against another person, there can be an element of crime that is murder. There can be a motivation to even gain. There can be issues of inheritance in there. However, sometimes there are a few elements of mental ill health that can also result in problems of homicide or violence against others. And one such is a delusional disorder, that is described as pathological jealousy or Othello syndrome. In Othello syndrome is where one spouse has extreme suspicions of their partner being unfaithful. And they go to great extents, to investigate them, and sometimes they end up harming them, despite all evidence.
If I were to carry that story and give that background, I might be accused of justification of what happened.
Because are you suggesting that someone who does something like that can hide behind the fact that I was suffering from a condition that is this and that?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just stating a scientific fact and saying that every case should be examined wholly.
But
every case should be examined fully, to the extent that if there are elements of mental ill health, then those should be dealt with. And I'm not saying that every homicide will have a mental health problem.
From a layman's perspective, if a crime is committed, the perpetrator should be punished whether or not they are mentally ill or have a problem.
No. Before for cases like murder, that's why even the court sends accused persons for mental evaluation before even the case proceeds, which is a really good thing. And that's why we'll separate if someone was going through mental issues, but also Daktari's point that it might come out as if we are justifying the killings. Exactly, it's like someone was suffering from a mental issue. Mental health is a concern that as a country we've not addressed. I agree with you by all means, and it's something that we really need to address, and especially in cases of suicide, and even in other cases of maybe murder or even manslaughter. That's something that ought to be addressed. However, if an accused person, if a perpetrator, let's allow the law to take its course. Before the trial proceeds, the court will send this person for a mental evaluation. It's only until they are convinced that this person can stand trial that they'll proceed with the case. And the doctors will do an evaluation. You can tell us exactly what they do in that evaluation. And if we have such, just coming back to the role of media in that, if we do that, like if tomorrow the Daily Nation highlights that let's not justify that because person A killed AIDS because they have some mental issue, but let's say that before a trial proceeds, this person will undergo mental evaluation, and you bring an expert like him and tell them to educate us on what mental evaluation is,
Right.
then we'll have
Yes.
a bigger picture on what exactly goes on when
Yes.
someone is sent for mental
And
evaluation.
I like to clarify that
Yes.
in fact,
And then
the bulk, almost 97% of all violent crimes are committed by people who are not mentally ill.
Yes.
97, only around 3%
Absolutely.
is committed by people who are mentally ill. So definitely we cannot say that all this is because of mental illness. But certain cases, yes, it will be because of
In
mental
our
illness.
reality, though, is that mental examination thorough enough to get to the point where they will say this man is of mental good health or good mental standing and should be held culpable?
Yes, as the Editorial said, that the evaluation is usually to determine if this person can stand trial.
That's true.
Is not to examine the circumstances of the crime, because that is the work of the judge. They will examine those circumstances.
That's true.
Because from the perspective of the psychiatrist, when you examine a patient at that point, it does not reflect their state when they committed the crime.
Yes.
And therefore the judge has to make the determination. However, we evaluate their status to understand if they are in a state of mind to understand what their crime entails and what it means for them to be charged with that crime.
Let's work with the reality in Kenya. And for instance, that story, you wrote about it, and you met this lady, young girl then, Liz, who was brutally raped in Western. This was in
Busia.
Busia, 2013,
Yes.
and the men were let go.
Yeah.
And perhaps you just say in the reportage the men were taken to for evaluation, and they were not of right mind and perhaps should not face charges. And we saw the furor that they followed when they were released. But in Kenya, you dare report that these guys did this to this, when it's of course confirmed that it was them, they did this to this girl. They left her paralyzed. Don't tell me about the mental state. Do you think the audience really cares about that process? We want to see someone being held to book.
Obviously, when you think about the victims of these situations, nobody wants to hear that you are temporarily insane, that is why you did this. But the fact of the matter is those could be factors that are driving people to do what they are doing. But there's also the element of people hiding behind these things. You go and do something as crazy as what this young man did to Ivy. You get into a vehicle, you take a friend, in fact. Then you go and buy an axe, then you go and sharpen it, then you drive all the way to where this girl is. Really, something has got to be wrong with you. And we must punish you for doing what you have done. So when we bring in this technical issues of saying, oh, evidence was not adduced, like in the case of this young girl in Busia, somebody was mentally unstable when they did this, or there was this and that other extenuating factor. What are we telling society? That you can do these things and you can get away with it. So I think that there's a failure in how the media reports that one fact. There's also a failure in our systems, in the way we process, prosecute, and bring people to account for what they are doing. There's also a failure in the way that the experts, health and other people handle these things, because prosecutions go, our health experts go and collude in some instances with people that are doing these things. So we're saying there's a problem that is making it fashionable to kill a young woman and walk free tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a failure. There's a lot that is going wrong. So let us say we should start to investigate where did these things start to go wrong.
Okay.
And now that we do know this, what are we going to do about it?
Yes, and I want Winnie to weigh in first, and then Editorial.
Let me flip this a little bit, because I like the fact that Elizabeth is saying that there's a problem when us media talk about these issues. But what we forget is that these media people are human beings. They have families. They live in a society. The journalists themselves, they are traumatized. I remember I've covered Onyancha. I covered Onyancha when he was being dragged from Thika. We went to Karen. We went to different places after he killed 19 women. We went with him, and he was showing us this place. This is a manhole. I dumped that woman. We go to Thika. We go to a lodge there, and he shows us this is where I packed this woman. We go to Karen in the sewage at Nairobi Water Company, and you see the place where he had hidden a body of a woman in a ceiling. And at the end of that day, you're traumatized as a human being. And I like the fact that you're saying you do trainings as equality now. The journalists are human beings. They are traumatized. You see these people, you're told to cover Onyancha. I covered Onyancha for like a week, almost like a week, continuous. From the forest where he had dumped a young boy, we went to Karen, we went to Thika, we went to Gikomba, all those places. And you're just seeing bodies, you're seeing, and you're wondering what's wrong with this human being. At the end of the day, as a journalist, and as much as we want to maybe say the journalists don't know how to cover these things, they are human beings. We are human beings, and we need, maybe somebody needs to, we need to go for counseling. We need to come to you, Daktari, and see you for our own mental health. Yeah, for our own mental health.
But how will you come to me when everyone feels psychiatrist?
That is also true. I agree with you. We are all human. Even as a legal profession, having to listen to a case of a girl who has been defiled, like the case in Busia, it's not easy, and it's gang rape. And you have to document that, so that even as we have to go for more training, psychosocial support is very critical for anyone reporting on such issues.
Yes.
But in the case
of
the
psychosocial support for journalists who can be able to get
media
from media people?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not there.
Now that's the gap that ought to be addressed.
Just follow the story, get it covered.
We don't get much of that.
I mean, like even there's a story we did. You talk about the young girl. We did a story in Kibera where a girl, where it was a foreigner plus house help. They were gang raped by this guy. A team of guys, and these guys, they went to court, they gave their evidence. The first time, I don't know what happened along the way, then they had to come back and give the same evidence over again. 3 times.
Yes.
And nothing happened, and the guys are still there.
Exactly. That's why psychosocial support for anyone working on such issues, I would say it's critical, and that's a gap. But just back quickly to the story of Justice for Liz, yeah? This is now me commending the media because of how that reportage took place, because headlines of perpetrators asked to slash grass at the police station, because that's a punishment they were given first. And the outcry and the petitions that came in, so many people signed that petition, to ensure that Liz access justice, is one of the reasons as to why this girl was in a position to access justice. And those people in authority had, and this was reported by the media, so many, both mainstream media, those coverage over and over again. That's why I'm saying coverage is good, reporting is good, it's how you report it.
Right.
And at that point, to be honest, I think the partnership between the media, the NGOs, the police, and everyone who is involved in the access to justice and the criminal justice system really bore fruits.
Yes.
Yes. And just calling it as it is, a girl, a 16-year-old girl, left to die in a pit latrine. Anyone who is reading that, even in the court system, the judges, the magistrates also read those newspapers, and they have the facts and the evidence. I mean, that one will make even the police officer who is sending the perpetrators to slash grass, as opposed to abiding by the provisions of the Sexual Offences Act, they'll ask themselves what's wrong with themselves. I mean, and that was one way that the media really came in holding the state to account.
But you don't agree with such a, and I bring this in as we take a break, with such a headline here, and if my director can take it, Ivy Wangeshi's killer, a quiet worker, and teetotaler.
You see,
when I saw that one, Mark, when we saw that one, we were all livid, and for a reason.
The guy had hired a lawyer.
You are already making this perpetrator, this accused person. You're telling us this is a quiet worker, this is an industrious person. He does not even drink, meaning that maybe those people who drink are the ones who killed. He's not an alcoholic. He's such a hardworking person, so there's no way this person would have killed.
What if, from the perspective of the journalist, the issue here was to look at a man who you wouldn't imagine would carry out such a heinous crime.
But
what
is this person? That's the problem.
You're trying to show a contrast.
No, but what
you're trying to show
a
contrast. But this is a person who is quiet, who
you're already profiling
that kind of story,
what a killer looks like. You're
was
already
that kind
profiling.
Of done for Ivy?
But
we've already seen that.
For
you're
Ivy?
profiling.
Was there a story that
like?
Was exalting her virtues and saying she's a wonderful woman? Was there one that was told about, was said about?
Thank you very much.
I think that she's a doctor, she's a medical doctor.
Which one? Please show me the headlines for that, Winnie.
The story that was carried, by the way, even on social media, I could not believe there were gatekeepers who sit behind these desks to look at what is it.
For social media, we can't quite speak for it because it has its rules.
I mean, not social media as in, this is not Facebook. This is coming from Nairobi News. Is it? These are the standard
the online version of NTV.
These
and
things
the other
are
rivers.
edited and put online by people who are editors. In fact, Mark, that brings in the question of how well equipped are we as media houses, really, to sit down and go through what we are sending out to the public. Because I get the feeling sometimes, and I'm an editor, so I guilty as charged, we fail to look through the text that we are sending out. There's a rush to scoop someone. I agree, because my story must get to the desk before the other one does. But really, what are we sacrificing? We don't check our facts, that's one thing. We don't check things that are, even some of these things are litigious. Somebody will sue you for printing out such stuff, but who is checking? The gatekeepers are failing to check the newspapers. So,
And I'd want us to move to what should we be doing different, and I'll give you an opportunity to speak to some of the other headlines you sent to me. And Daktari, you can explain also from a psychiatric background, or whether it's important to have such a headline where, you know, with the demeanor of this person who has carried out such a bad, heinous crime, you would never expect it from such a person. Perhaps even when you have, that's why you have stories of, you know, a pastor caught, you know, with someone else's wife. It's an expectation of a pastor to uphold morals. So that shock effect, and it's clickbait, let's be honest. It's clickbait.
Whether this person at some point served as a priest, you know, should never be highlighted in that story. That one, you are rewarding that individual and encouraging that behavior. It's a reward. And that's why during terrorist attacks, we don't go on highlighting the backgrounds of the terrorists.
Yes,
you know,
you
want to punish that behavior, and part of the punishment is to give that person a blackout.
Well, sometimes we do the profiles of those attackers because they lived within our communities, and we have the witness accounts of the neighbors, classmates, even sometimes you know, spouses, and even parents who say, I didn't expect my son to do such a thing. So anyway,
I think the best model for me comes from New Zealand. The unfortunate attack on the mosque, the attackers were not given any chance.
Profile in any way. And that's another discussion for another day. We'll stick to this when we get back in the concluding part of the show. Stay with us. Welcome back to the concluding part, and the conversation has been going on, as you can hear, during the break, and we only have perhaps a little more over 5 minutes for us to give our concluding remarks. And some of the examples that you'd given me, and I have to be fair, and I told it with you, and you know, you said the Ivy Wangeshi killer headline, a quiet work in T-top that was not fair. The other one, Naftali Kinuthia killed Ivy Wangeshi due to rejection, say police. And why perhaps would this be a problem if indeed it's one of the causes that led to the murder? We're not saying rejection is good enough reason to do anything at that level.
There are elements of murder, intentional and the act. You did it intentionally. As one of my colleagues was saying, is this guy traveled all the way to do that.
Yes.
So you premeditate that. All the way on your way from here, Nairobi or Thika to Eldoret, it never occurred to you that you can now change your mind. So this is someone who really wanted to do this. It's not about rejection, it's not about love, it's not about money. Yeah. It's killing. You really wanted to kill this person, and this person did not want you. If someone does not want you, just leave them. The moment we start saying it's because of rejection, does that mean that every other time I get a rejection from someone, I go kill them?
It's not justifying it, it's saying what the,
but mark the moment,
suspect has
Mark, please, the moment you put it like that in the newspaper, you're already justifying it, and you're telling other people that if someone rejects them, get an axe and kill them. If you send someone money, because you are investing in them, kill them. That's the message you're sending.
Let me throw this to her, because we were discussing something else and it's in the same line.
Yes.
And this is just one of the headlines that you would see. Onyancha, who you covered for quite some time, Philip Ondari Onyancha, he was a serial killer and killed 18 women at least in 2009. And this is one of the headlines: the devil told me to kill 100 women. If we're telling this story, and Onyancha actually said it.
Yes, he said it. He confessed it.
So what's wrong in...
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong in hearing what this person is saying. You know, it's fresh. It's... at that, it's a moment of truth for him. He's just revealing what the devils inside him are telling him. He's just saying things because that's what he's going through.
Yes.
At that, and it's good for us to know how his psyche is. Then we can now be able to tell the stories. You know, at times they say there's a right of hearing. In as much as it's very heinous, there's a right of hearing. Let's hear this side and this other side.
For what purpose?
It's for everyone's purpose, for objectivity.
And let's not get it twisted in any way that there was an agreement or the acceptance of what he did.
Yeah,
I think it was very clear with every
but you give so much prominence to such a headline. That's a message you're passing.
Was that story done during the trial or after the fact? When was it done?
No, it was done immediately when he was found out.
For me, it doesn't matter. You're sending already a message.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're sending a message.
You're making a case for
you're
this
justifying
guy.
as to why he killed
but
all these women.
What have you said?
Doesn't matter. But you do your due diligence as a journalist.
Yes.
Are you doing any due diligence?
No.
But let me ask this.
You have to be objective.
Objectivity, that's not
I think we need the intervention of our psychiatrist on the panel at this point. Because if, for instance, someone says, I did this
is not
because
justifying
the
killing
devil
of
told me
women
to do so, isn't it important for you to understand that aspect and perhaps see where he's coming from? Not at all to say it is okay, because you heard the voices of the devil.
Where?
But if he said it and we need to report it, from your psychiatric background, do you think it is informative or we could do without this detail?
Yeah, I mean, if I was a judge sitting on that, where they sit, and looking at that case, and this individual talks about the devil having told them, that means that there's something mentally wrong.
Yes.
That statement portrays it could be pretense really, but it portrays that there could be something wrong, and it needs objective assessment.
Yes.
By a trained professional.
Yes.
Who in this case will be a psychiatrist.
But isn't that the objectivity that Winnie is talking
No,
about?
absolutely
Because it
not.
speaks to something else.
Because
Yeah.
when Winnie reports, when you report such a story, what are you telling me? The person who reads your newspaper, your articles, every other time, you're telling me there's a reason why this person killed.
But you're
already justifying.
Exactly.
You're not even telling me about these. How many women did he kill? You're not even telling me the status of these women, how their lives, their families, their loved ones. What are they going through after this killing? You're just telling me that the reason why Onyancha killed
my defense,
is
I would
because the
say-
devil told him to kill.
In my defense, I would say there are no cops. These are people. Their families have not been told, and the cops are there.
It
They're
doesn't
just
matter. It really doesn't
But
matter.
to be honest, and to the questions that you put, Naitore, this was by Dennis Onsarigo, my former colleague here, and he was at the Standard when he put this forward. And he does give the details of the man who killed at least 18 women in 2009.
But what is the headline? If
Yes.
I'm passing around CBD, what will I see? At what point will I come in? You know, the rest of the details are
Yes.
footnotes. You're putting them as footnote. Tell
But
me,
yes.
the headline is what shapes my idea and my agenda. Before even I start reading something like this, I already have the headline.
But you also know it goes like this with the
Yes.
pyramid.
Yeah.
It gives you details
Yes,
from the
I know
very
the
top.
detail.
It catches your attention.
yes.
It's not justifying.
It's
And-
very-
and-
Thank you very
and
much.
Elizabeth,
Thank you very
it
much,
catches your
Mark.
attention.
Yes,
And to
the
listen.
reason
Headliner.
why you're putting this headline is to catch my attention, and the first thing I'll be like, oh my goodness, this person did not kill these women because he wanted to. Maybe there's something wrong with him. By the time I'm reading the rest of the story, these are just footnotes. There's a reason why you pick a specific headline. Yes, there's a
You've
reason.
been an editor, and
Yes.
you'd understand where this is coming from. Not agree to it, but
get
you'd
that,
understand.
yeah, I hear you. I get that there's a need on the part of the journalist and the newspaper to keep the hype going, because we're in the business of selling news. That's what we do. But then every headline that you put out there, you know, before I went to training to start to understand what it means to, for example, cover rape with sensitivity, I would have said, like you would, that if it bleeds, it leads.
Yes.
I would have. When I used to, before I went for training and I'd interview a rape victim or a person who has gone through a traumatic incident, what I want is the gory details. But then you ask yourself, to what end? Why are you telling this story? What's your objective for telling this story? For example, when you tell me that Onyancha, or this other guy in Naivasha who was killing people and eating their flesh, when you tell me that he used to hear voices, that he had, some of the stories I see, honestly speaking, do not merit to be in the newspapers. They do not.
Okay,
Because
so
there is no, first of all, when you ask, why are you telling that story? Does it satisfy why you're telling it? Does it tell you to what kind of reaction do you expect from me? Because when you tell me something, you expect that I should do something about it. So when you try to justify a killing, saying somebody was hearing voices or somebody was enraged because the guard refused to go out with him or stuff like this, what are you expecting for me to do? Because human nature is such that when I hear this, I'm either going to be empathetic for the killer.
but here you
or-
definitely be enraged. I'm like, this man is
Yes.
crazy.
Where?
With
When
this,
you know the
the
gory
devil
details,
told-
you will be enraged, and even the judge himself will go like, I mean, you said they read these
then
things
again,
and they watch.
You're telling
Then
that story while this thing is in process. There's a trial going on.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? You're making a case for this killer. Yes. And if you would take a representative sample of young people, just today I was talking to a certain young lady, and I was asking her what these killings have done to her relationships and what she thinks about what is going on. And she told me, first off, heroes have been made out of these killers. These young men are bragging for what they've been doing to young women because it has become the in thing. And she told me, I'm living in fear. These young people have been put in a space where it is me, I'm responsible for my life, I need to protect myself. These people cannot be blamed for their actions. They have justifiable motive. So all I'm saying, from an editor's perspective, from a mother's perspective, and from a writer's perspective, I write as well, I am saying, let us refocus our reporting. Let us empathize with whatever is going on. You know, sometimes you tell a story and you wonder, do I live here? When you have told that story the way you have told it, are you going to leave the next day and never come back? Because you must think about, you know, earlier when I was talking about being pro-justice and peace building, I realized that there's an interplay in all these things work together. They work in concert. So, and I'm saying some people, sometimes you might think that I have a duty to tell the story, the consequences will take care of themselves. That is not how it works. So I would be asking the media, me being one of them, rethink our standing, rethink our reporting, rethink even how you package news. Okay. Because I think that's where the real started being.
All right, now I want to run down the panel right now and start with the president of Association of Freelance Journalists. These stories come from them, many of them. They're the ones who give us the details. And yes, they don't have the luxury of perhaps those who are in Nairobi, perhaps access to the daktaris for psychiatric help. In your view, from your standpoint, what needs to, if anything, refocus in our telling of these stories? Because unfortunately, they keep coming up.
Unfortunately, I'll still go back to what I said. Like, we need more trainings for journalists on how to report on these things, and even like she said, psychosocial support even after reporting these cases. Because if you go to the counties, they're still happening, these things. But again, we also need to focus on the root cause of all these issues. There's something that's triggering this thing. There's something. Mark, you can't say that, and especially economic, socioeconomic values that we have. There's something that's triggering this thing, and there's something that we need to work on. As a nation, as a country, as Kenyans, we need to sit down within ourselves, reconcile within ourselves, and then we can be able to know what's happening. But again, let's help the journalists who are telling the stories. Yes, at times it might feel like we are sympathizing with the killers, but also let's also give when we were taught in school in journalism, we were told you have to be objective. Give side A a chance, give side B a chance. Let them talk. Then the judgment is not for you as a journalist to make that judgment. It's for the viewers and the readers to make the judgment. So that's the only thing that we can back on. Right. If we don't give a chance to everyone, even if he's the devil himself, give the devil the chance to make his own whatever comments, and let's listen to the angels and see who has a fair for everything.
All right, thank you, Naitore. Also, what she spoke about, how we inform an ongoing case when we're reporting on it, even from your legal background and your concerns, and then as you conclude.
Yes, exactly. And based on what she just said is that how we report will inform, and also it will have a couple of reactions to people. You know, victims live in these societies. Yes? So if you're already saying the reason, let's say in cases of defilement, the reason why this girl was defiled is because she was out at night, and then the perpetrator is arrested, then you're already putting the life of that victim at risk. We've had cases where persons who have been defiled or raped, minors who've been defiled and adults are raped, whereby even their houses have been burnt because the society is outraged because maybe a news item indicated why are you arresting our people? In this case, it's the perpetrators, and the community comes around and they are justifying, and they are they feel like this girl is the reason why these people are being arrested. And it's the victim who is being blamed. So we perpetrate victim blaming and victim shaming in how we report such cases.
Like in the case of Liz, we should have been mindful of.
Yes, exactly. And all cases of SGBV, like where even we have victims having to move from their homes, relocating. Secondly, there's no competition in terms of how many women have been killed and how many men have been killed. Absolutely not. That was not my point. I think I need to underscore that.
Yes.
There are cases of femicide and they are on the rise, that's for sure. And when we have data and we say 40,000 people were killed, let's say, how are these people killed? At what point? And that will make a very more informed advocacy that is more informed and based on data. And finally, numerous cases are not reported, be it cases of femicide, be it cases of SGBV. Let's also not forget those cases that are also not reported.
All right.
Yes.
And Mark, to you, Dr. and then
yes, Mark Masai, I have to say that the Kenyan media is doing a great job. You are doing a great job. I actually sympathize with the Kenyan media because we are living in a country with a very high burden of mental illnesses. A conservative estimate will be that maybe about 4 million Kenyans are suffering from mental illnesses. The problem is about 80% of these Kenyans do not access any treatment. And there are consequences for neglecting mental health for so long. And this shows up in our homes, on the roads, it shows up in our schools, it shows up at our workplaces. And so media has to grapple with all these things. And the question is, why are 80% of Kenyans not accessing any mental health care?
What would you want the media to do as a person who's keen on mental health?
There are many problems that are even beyond the media, but what media can do is recognizing the important role that media has in informing the public. The media should play a major role in raising mental health literacy in our country. And that means that we, the people in the media, must educate themselves on the causes of these mental illnesses, on symptoms of these mental illnesses, and how to prevent them, and how to tell people where to find help. So that that itself will do one thing. It's going to reduce stigma against mental illnesses. When it reduces stigma, we'll have more people coming to hospitals to seek help.
All right. And to you, Elizabeth, finally.
Finally, I think that over and above everything, the media, like Dr. has said, has done a good job in some areas, because you have a duty to inform everyone, regardless of how terrible the situation can be. So I know it's a very dicey affair, trying to balance what is fair, what is objective in the midst of all these things happening. But I also think that most often when these stories are told, we forget to speak about the social justice angle. The situation that is putting young people in such a desperate situation that they are going into relationships out of desperation. A situation where a young person feels that if I am not with this person, I have no chance in life whatsoever. If this girl does not go out with me, my life is over. Why is it that our young men are and women are in such a state? It is because of the social justice problems that they are facing. Young men are out of work. Young men are stigmatized just because of being young men. Young men are coming from dysfunctional families. Young women are coming from places where their sense of value has been so undermined that they feel that for me to be validated, I need to be with this man. Regardless of what this man does to me, I need to stick with it. This is coming from how they've been informed by their parents, what they're hearing from their peers, what they're hearing from the grapevine. All these pressures are bearing down on these young people. As a consequence of that, we are seeing these killings. So when we tell these stories, can we try to be as holistic as possible? Saying it is not the eventual killing that actually should gain prominence. It is the factors surrounding these young people and why they are where they are. I think if we start to fix these things, because again, society is a product of homes. When there is war at home, these kids are coming from families that are dysfunctional. There is war at home on a daily basis. These kids have no conflict resolution training. These kids have no threshold for how much they can bear. They have no dispute resolution training. They have no idea how to handle a dispute because this has been modeled in their homes. It is like father and mother disagree, there's combat, people are fighting. So these kids go out and practice what they are saying. So let us tell a whole story that says we all have a role to play. The media could have done something, yes. Society is doing something, yes. parents are doing something, schools are failing, so we all have a stake in what is going on. And until we refocus what we are talking about and say this is not, what killings are a symptom of what is going wrong. Unless we talk about this holistically and say we can fix this, we own the problem, we also own the solutions. Let us speak to that.
And there's a lot to respond to online in terms of people following the conversation. And please do go on your handles. All their handles, I tweeted all their handles, tagged them when we were talking about the focus for today. And you can find their accounts and engage them further after we go off air. And Mudanya says, the work of a journalist is to report but not to prosecute a case. So according to the panelists, we are not allowed to cover people in prisons just because we want to avoid publicizing. Let's not get into that. We'll start another show. But just to give a quick answer, would you do the Onyancha story any different if it happened today?
If it was to happen today, again, I would still do the same and get more traumatized, but now back it up with evidence, back it up with data, and see what has happened over the years, and how many serial killers have we had, and how many have been prosecuted. The data speaks for itself. That is what I'd go for. But another thing, let's not forget, mariticide is against killing of men, husbands, and then we have uxoricide, which is for females. We need to know those definitions as journalists
and, I've just known today,
and be able to.
You learn something new.
Uxoricides and mariticides. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna Google that. Thank you so much for that, Winnie Kamau. Thank you, Elizabeth Wanja, for your time. Thank you, Dr. Chitai. And I believe right now you're focusing on the psychiatric field, not politics.
Until later.
Editorial, Nyamu, thank you so much for your time. And please, guys, let's engage the people online in the questions that they've raised and the observations as they're following this very engaging conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And yes, we'll leave you with something that is making headlines in Uganda, and the group of journalists within the parliamentary side of things, that is the Association of Parliamentary Reporters, have been asking for a stipend from Parliament. And these are some of the headlines. Journalists are asking for Parliament for monthly allowances. And in their explanation, they feel that they're poorly paid and should be viable or eligible for an amount. And Parliament journalists defend move to get monthly allowance from government amid the backlash, because people are saying they will not be objective covering Parliament if they were given money by the very same institution that they have to hold to account. Journalists ask Parliament for monthly allowances. Do you think this would happen in Kenya, or do you think it should? I'm not starting another show, although Winnie has already said it should not. Yes.
Objectivity.
All the way. All right. Thank you. We'll leave you with that. On that note, the conversation, as I've said before, goes on online after we go off air. Thank you to the team that have made this possible and have stayed the long hours into the night. My name is Mark Masai. Have yourself a good night.